Hello, everybody, and welcome to WOTS Weekly Features. Today is a first for WOTS history, I'm pretty sure, in honor of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, which is happening this week. We're enjoying some live drawing courtesy of Korean-Canadian illustrator and comic artist Eric Kim. I'm Sienna Tristan, and I'll be your host. WOTS Toronto operates on land that is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Peytoon First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Anishinaabeg and Allied Nations to care for and share the resources around the Great Lakes in peace. We encourage you to educate yourself about the land that you live on, wherever you're tuning in from. So Eric Kim, and Eric Kim's wonderful art.
Hi.
There we go. Eric Kim is an illustrator, educator, and comic artist from Toronto. His projects focus on relatable experiences through using the graphic novel format. His first project with Jay Torres was about a Canadian that encounters and learns to embrace Korean culture. Other works include the short story The Recording with Van Jensen for Where We Live, a benefit for the victims of the Las Vegas shooting, Northgard with Anthony Falcone for Chapter House Publishing, and Billy Smoke with B. Clay Moore. Eric has also run classes through his Manga Dojo workshop, which helps to empower students through creating their own graphic novels and stories. We are already underway. Oh, wow. The perspective. This got started like 2 seconds ago for everyone who's watching at home, and it's popping.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm just sort of drawing a picture of what TCAF 3031 might look like. So I'm kind of sketching like what the reference library from memory.
The TPL, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of in there. I think. I don't know. Just sort of playing around and seeing what I can do. I get the feeling there'll still be banners and stuff and everything.
Hollow banners, just holographic everything.
Oh yeah. Oh, geez. Thank you very much for having me. This is a real honor to be able to draw and stuff for everybody. I haven't done this in a little while, so this is great. And also to kick off like a first for WOTS. This is pretty neat.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've never done, we were talking about this in the back channel, but we've never done like just like sit and watch someone make beautiful art happen on screen, partially because up until 2 years ago, there wasn't much in the way of digital events with WOTS, where traditionally a very sort of geographically grounded event. But I mean, things happened in 2020, and we've had to adapt like everybody else has had to adapt. And so on the one hand, it kind of sucks that it had to happen out of like pure necessity, but also now we get to do really cool stuff like this because we've caught up with the cutting edge of technology that streamers and gamers and illustrators have been doing this for years already, right? This is nothing new.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's definitely pretty neat. The majority of my work actually ends up being digital nowadays. So this is really convenient, I have to admit, for me. But actually doing video was kind of a new thing. I started doing some Twitch streams this year, and it's a little different sort of being on video and sort of learning to accommodate for it. But I'm having a good time. It's been really enjoyable, and been able to connect with like people from out of town and like friends I haven't seen in a while, and just all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is fun. This is kind of meta right now. Like I'm looking at the little image that has like your, flesh and bone face drawing something. And then I'm looking over at what you're drawing and I'm like, it's like endlessly recursive.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see if I can, there we go. So there's like 2 screens. So one.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sort of the full picture and then a nice close up. That's great. Yeah. Clearly you've been doing this for a while because you're able to set it up in such a way that we get like the front row seats.
I'm really glad that this works out. So much of this is sort of like on the fly and like, oh my gosh, is it working and all this other stuff. But I'm really glad that it's sort of working out.
It's very homebrew. So for anyone who's just tuned in and didn't hear us at the beginning, we're currently trying to construct, imagine, design what a TCAF in 3031 would look like. So TCAF 1,000 years in the future, which we hope is still ongoing at that point.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. The comics community is very resilient, I find. So,
Everlasting, yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. So it's pretty great. Oh my goodness. So yeah, like it's let's see. Sorry, drawing brain while
Yeah,
I
yeah, no, I completely understand. No, no,
yeah,
no. You were asking about Watson and how things have changed since virtual
yes,
began last year. And the answer is it's changed everything, honestly, because not only are we able to invite people from all over the place that might not have the financial means or the accessibility means to attend or present at the festival, we can now have people from all over the place so long as there's a stable internet connection. You can come in and read from your poetry book, or have a conversation about a really interesting topic, or whatever it is that your talent is. We're able to accommodate that now in ways that we weren't able to do when it was just a matter of like, are you in Toronto? Right.
oh
And
yeah,
so it's really opened up like all of Canada, and also like Canadian expats as well.
oh wow,
There's people who are like living in the UK, or people who are living in the US right now who have ties to Canada that have been able to participate in the past year's events, which has been super cool because again, like you don't get that kind of reach when it's a geographically locked sort of thing.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember like just all the shows that would be at like Queens Park Circle and like
Yeah.
yeah, it was although it was like region based, it was like definitely a lot of fun for people to get together and like exchange just conversations with each other and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that you in your bio. I creeped your bio.
That's okay.
It's my job. I'm an interviewer. I saw that you've presented with Word on the Street before. So tell me about that.
Yeah, that was back I think 2007 I think and so um I had presented there and I think I was just exhibiting some books. That was the year I got to meet David Suzuki, which
Oh
was really,
wow.
really cool.
Yeah.
Because, you sort of see him on TV and it's like, oh my God, you're here in the flesh and I can I can
You're a
actually
real human being. Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing. So like that was very cool. And uh yeah, it was just a really fun experience. Like Word on the Street has always been like it's always been really great for me. Like just to see everybody and interact and like just everybody that sort of shows up too. It's like it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, we get the numbers we get are just off the charts, right? Like, you
Yeah.
go to, I also saw that, you've been to Ad Astra before, which is a convention that I've gone to, and the number difference is just wild, right? Like, you go to a
Oh yeah.
convention and, that you have numbers in the hundreds. You have a couple hundred people who are really jazzed to be there, really excited, really sort of niche interests.
Oh
And
yeah.
then you go
Yeah.
to a festival, and the festival is like thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And the scale is just it's completely different experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like especially like with that Astra, it's fun because like there would be like lots of different interests and like people would just talk and it's a real opportunity to share like those conversations that like I think people would really like to have and then like just discuss like fan things for fan issues more, which is
Hmm.
really cool. And then also just being at Word on the Street, it's like it's also got that really fun aspect of being like much larger, much more diverse. You can see a huge broad range of different categories of books and stuff, and things that people are discussing and promoting, which is also really great.
Absolutely. So I'm curious to know when, um, like speaking of nerd stuff and speaking of just like your career and things, what's one project? Because again, you've got there's projects beyond what I listed in my sort of like short version of your bio. You've done film, you've done television, you've done video games.
Mhm.
I'm curious about whether there is one project that you like deeply, desperately want to work on that you just haven't had the chance to do yet. Whether it's like you don't have time, or like the offer hasn't been made yet, but like what's something that you'd really want to do that you haven't gotten to yet?
I think it would be fun to do some superhero stuff. That's for sure. I don't
Hmm.
haven't really gotten a chance to do that sort of thing for like Marvel or DC yet in a large way, or like same with the like Dark Horse or any of the like the large companies. Most of my
Hmm.
stuff has been mostly in children's books and let's see, children's books, children's publishing, teen, even some romance books actually for Harlequin. That was actually like a
Really?
romance covers. Yeah, it's kind of funny. They had like a short little manga pseudo romance thing going on. I don't know if they're in print, and they were probably just like first editions anyways, but they were really fun to do. Um, a lot of steamy stuff, right? But
Raunchy.
yeah, so it was really fun to do those covers and stuff. Um, and yeah, it was just like being able to do, I think, something where there's like more physicality and like people just doing crazy, um, outrageous cosmic stuff and that sort of thing. I think that would be really fun to sort of like to try out and see if see what I can help bring to it. I don't know.
Yeah, very dynamic, lots of fireballs.
Oh yeah, yeah. The fireballs are like are they're par for the course, I think. Uh, so it's very important, I think. But yeah, other than that, um, sorry, I'm just drawing everyone's banner because I'm
No,
sure
for sure.
we'll still have banners. But yeah, maybe 3D banners. Um, yeah, I think that sort of thing would be a lot of fun. Also, like some colleagues are doing some really great stuff, uh, and they're well definitely having a great time of it. I think too. So it'd be great to sort of join in the fun somehow.
Yeah, for sure. There's one definition of, I don't know. I feel like as artists, a lot of the time, so much of our struggle is just deciding what success means to us because there's no definition, right? Like it's just endless milestones, and every time you hit one, it's like, oh, well, time for the next one.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
feels like an endless grind. And I once I read a definition of success from author Charlie Jane Anders. She
Oh, she's
said,
great.
"Oh, isn't she just the best?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she has a nonfiction book coming out, or maybe it has come out. I mean, the chapters came out individually on Tor.com. It's called Never Say You Can't Survive. And it's all about sort of writing and art making through crisis, kind of like the one we're in right now. And in one of those chapters, something that she had to say about success was that for her working definition of success was the ability to continue making art, like one day after another, to have the resources, to have the ability to keep doing this thing. And secondly, to have the opportunity to like make cool stuff with people that she respects and admires.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, I
that
think that's really huge too.
for sure. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, like I think one of the things that had actually been kind of bothering me for a little while was actually trying to put parameters on those definitions of success, because like when it's ambiguous and ever changing, it feels like it's just not, you'll never get a hold of it. You'll never really be able to like put it into terms. And so I think there ends up being opportunities there for to be uh, un, unfair to yourself. I think like when you are
Mm,
making real headway, and then you feel like maybe there isn't. It's like you don't credit yourself with the success that you've earned. So that can be kind of a tough thing. I think that's sort of like where I think a lot of people end up just sort of beating up on themselves, and that can be rather unfair. So like when there are like, I don't want to say metrics because it sounds so like art, you know, technological, but
corporate.
yeah, when you hit your KPIs, but yeah, like when you have like those things that you can look at and say like, oh, I did this and I did that, and then you can actually like take pride in your accomplishments. I think that's very like very important. So being able to like not measure them out, but certainly being more fair and saying like, okay, well, you did these things, you accomplished those things, and like, those are great signs of success. You know?
Yeah. And knowing what you want too, right? This is, I feel like
Oh
half
yeah.
of everyone's battle, whether they're artists or entrepreneurs or marine biologists or whatever, is just like knowing what you want out of an experience. Do
Oh
you
yeah.
want to get into sort of like Marvel and DC and all of the like the big superhero comic company? Do you want to make a huge splash in indie? Do you want to get into TV adaptations? Like what's your, and it doesn't have to be the same thing forever, but
Oh yeah. Yeah,
what's
absolutely.
what's the mountain that you're walking towards?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's very important to be able to like to be able to define things, because when obviously when it doesn't, then it can be endless, like that sort of
Yeah.
struggle. Yeah. A friend of mine actually had this great cartoon that I'll sort of recreate. And so it was like, this is by Svetlana Shmakova. And so there's like this cat, and she's inside
Mhm.
of a box. And so the cat is like trying to scale the walls of this box. And so the cat does, uh, sorry, I'm skipping to the end.
For sure.
sorry, she manages to scale the box and she's out of it, and then all of a sudden she finds that once she's out of the box, there's actually like another box to get out of.
There's a bigger box.
Yeah. So it can be like it can feel endless, but I guess in this case, if there's a way to like sort of make that box a little bit more defined, then it's like, oh, this isn't just an endless series of boxes. It can start to sort of slow down a little bit. But yeah, like one thing that I actually sort of realized recently was actually about doing my research in terms of like who I was writing for, because that was another thing. I find that like a lot of things continuously shift and change over time. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong drawing. Change over time. So like as you change, or as I change, I guess, the writing that I want to do sort of becomes more ambitious. So it's sort of like a scope creep in a way. Of
Yeah.
Yeah. And that sort of becomes something to really watch out for, which I'd never really thought about. But it's like, oh, I'm trying to, like, who am I trying to create these books for? Like, is it for me? Is it for like what age, and like what am I doing, and that sort of thing. Oh my goodness, I'm really drawing myself in here.
I'm watching, and that's the thing. I was like, I'm watching it all come together. This is what did I say about this being endlessly recursive?
Oh, very true. Oh my goodness.
Well, it's funny you bring that up in terms of sort of not even just an audience, but a theme and like what it is that that you're working on and who you're working on it for and who you want to share it with. One of my other things that I wanted to ask about was this line in your bio about wanting to like share relatable experiences through the theme or through the format of the graphic novel. And I was curious about what some of those relatable experiences are in your opinion.
Oh, that's sort of like that was a very obnoxious way of saying that. I was creating mostly romances and like slice of life comics for a bit. So that was kind of the idea behind the relatable experiences. But I think using comics, well, I guess as I think about it now, comics are such a great way to be able to like there's such an accessible medium because it's just paper and pencils, to be able to really account or recount like the things that you've gone through in life. And so being able to empower people with that or being able to share those experiences is pretty neat. It's like the barrier for entry is so low, and like being able to like account for what you've gone through, it's like it's just a really great medium in that respect. So mostly just being able to share like things that have gone on in life, and it's so important just to be able to speak up and really say like what your day-to-day is like, to be able to make everything more relatable, to be able to say this is what has been going on in my life, and being able to share commonalities. That sort of thing, I think, really develops it develops commonalities, it develops trust, and we're able to see ourselves more as just people, instead of like labels or objects or things or anything.
Buzzwords.
Yeah, like I'm very proud of my identity, but I know that it can also be sort of like a box that's confining. So if there's too much attention paid to just being like too much emphasis on Korean, then it sort of loses, or Korean Canadian, it loses I guess sort of it loses the perspective of being more. And it's very it's kind of vague, sorry, but I think art helps to sort of tell those stories of things that don't really enter the mainstream, like
Absolutely.
Right.
Do you feel that? I mean, I'm sure you do. This is a leading question. So I'm gonna change it. Not do you, but how do you think that like a visual medium like differs in its way to help tell those stories from something that is just strictly text, like a novel or a poem or short stories or anything like that. Like how do you feel this adds to the conversation?
Oh, sure. I think that what it does is it ends up like adding a lot to the experience of what it was like to be in that particular time and place um, at in that time. So like me drawing this in like 2021. Oh my God. Sorry. For a second,
It's 2021. Did
oh
you
my
know?
God. Where did the time
We're
go?
almost halfway through it, which is wild.
It's an entire year that just took a mulligan. Like, what's going on? But like, yeah, what I find is that it's easier to sort of like really say like what went on, the time and place, and like describe everything in a much more like in a much more authentic manner, and in a way that describes what was important to the artist at the time. So it really sort of illustrates um, that which was top of mind. And I think that like when it comes to other visual mediums, like say film or well, film or TV, I guess just video in general, it it captures everything. So it becomes a better historical account, but it may not necessarily have like the resonance of something that's like of that which was like top of mind. Like the focus isn't necessarily there. There's attention paid elsewhere. Which is fine. And then when it comes to comparing it to text, like say prose, it's again like kind of a different thing because um, the because language works so differently between people, it sort of changes up like how we interpret those words. The language barrier is there, and um, and how we access it. So when it's written for like say um, an older audience, you can carry a lot of nuance and stuff. When it's written for younger audiences, maybe that nuance isn't necessarily there, but you can certainly get across the ideas. And so it sort of changes like the it changes the conversation, I guess, slightly. Um, and I guess what can be conveyed sort of becomes like an interesting thing, I guess. So I guess like comics is nice for me because like whether a person feels confident with their artwork or not, and like depending on whatever story they want to tell, whether it's like a work of like ambitious fiction or like a thing of fantasy or whatever, like it's still interesting to see how they interpret those things, what was drawn, what they felt was important, and what emphasis was put there.
I think it's interesting too because you mentioned that we interpret words differently. We don't just interpret them differently depending on our experience, but also sometimes literally through a cultural lens.
Yeah, exactly.
Things can get lost in translation, even though they are on the surface in English all the time. I'm a linguist by trade, academically speaking, so that kind of stuff fascinates. Yeah, I know all
really
kinds
cool.
of stuff. Yeah, it's neat. It's really neat. And my thesis, not to talk about myself too much, people at home, but my honors thesis was actually a 30-page graphic novel, a comic, for a legend from no kidding.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh my
God. It was a graphic representation of an Ojibwe legend. And I did it in English and in Anishinaabe, which is the Ojibwe language, and then did a whole essay on how the story changes depending on what language you're reading it in, and the nuance that kind of disappears when it's told in English through a colonial lens and through a Eurocentric lens. And so I feel like the art is the bridging point.
Exactly. It's like those lenses are so important to sort of like to recognize that they're there and like really be able to like not avoid them. I guess it's sort of impossible in a way, I guess, with like because of like just the Canadian framework, maybe. Like maybe I'm being pessimistic too. But like I think that like there's so much more that can be communicated through the use of art. Like there's more culture that can be sort of transmitted. So like being able to get across more through just words and text, you can really get at like some other complicated ideas that maybe just don't translate very well. How was your thesis received?
It was interesting because I mean, no one, as far as the memory of the like department went, no one had ever done this before. But I had a really kick-ass supervisor who like fought for it and made it happen. And the linguistics department were, you know, also very open-minded in terms of like how stories can be told, because it's kind of their job, right?
So cool.
It was really neat, right? Like you're in a liberal arts. Like I went to York, right?
Right.
And the liberal arts, you know, people are usually already pretty open-minded, but then to be able to take in something that's a little bit more visual art and sequential art and be like, this is how I'm going to do this academic thing, and then to have people be like, yeah, you could do that. I think that's really cool. I was talking to Miles from TCAF on Tuesday, and he mentioned a couple of projects that got my mind really going in terms of how there's a lot of comic art nonfiction coming out lately. And I found that, so just because it's not something that was on my radar, but I find that really fascinating that we're not even things like memoir. Like I consider memoir like a creative nonfiction type thing, but just like straight up nonfiction, and even like instruction manuals and things like that will be fully illustrated and stuff like that.
That's really smart.
Yeah, right. And I find that really interesting because, I mean, especially with a super technical document, like a terms and conditions or something like that, like super boring, super dry. You're not going to read that until it's too late, right?
Yeah, actually, I know that. I know that book too. Actually, like the guy that illustrated the Apple
That's
TOS.
the one.
Yeah, that was really neat. Actually, it was really smart too, because like I think that there's a lot that ends up like that's a good example of like text sort of being super dense, and like how it's like designed to be unintelligible, which is like which is pretty neat. So like being able to like read it and really understand like the nuances behind ideas, or like what's sort of being conveyed, that there are secondary meanings that can be attached to like just the artwork itself. Like it becomes really fascinating, just sort of like seeing how, yeah, like how visual narratives like play out with that sort of thing. And obviously it's not like a project that like maybe a film company would get behind and be like, hey, let's go for this. And it's a little bit too experimental, maybe.
Let's film all the terms and conditions from these top 10 products. No, no, but yeah, I think it's fascinating because of the fact that our attention is drawn, right, to like colorful things or flashy things or things that bear sort of an anthropomorphic resemblance to us. And so you can convey information that would otherwise be totally skipped over.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
people actually pay attention to it.
Yeah, I think that's actually like also kind of a funny thing. Something I've been starting to really notice lately has been like how cartooning can sort of like be its own method of communication. So like there was a lot of focus on like say just well, I've been sort of thinking about Alex Toth or Toth, depending on how you pronounce it. I have no idea. Recently, and just about like how he would do his cartooning, and so this idea of like simplifying images so that they become more legible, and then in that way too, it's sort of like the visuals and the pictures themselves become sort of like in a way like their own alphabet, because they're designed for legibility, but they're also designed to carry additional information. Like maybe it's like a setting, a moment, an action, a feeling, or it's an interesting use of image and metaphor.
That's my phone going. That's a great idea. The little ding is like your light bulb turned on.
Oh boy.
No, and it makes me think of things like, you know, just the common symbols that we see all over the place in our daily life, like street signs, like the walk sign, right? It's the most universally understood symbol in the world.
Oh yeah.
And it's been simplified to just kind of mean one thing. And you get these kind of ideograms or these glyphs or these pictograms. I mean, we've been doing pictograms for tens of thousands of years, right? Yeah. So it's no surprise that we would reclaim that really intentionally now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, this is like turning such a heavy conversation.
This is if you talk with me for longer than 10 minutes, this is always how it goes. But
I
this is
absolutely love
also
it.
like this drawing is coming along. This looks so cool.
I'm sort of shocked actually. It really wasn't planning for anything to actually sort of come out, and this is like, oh, this is actually going somewhere.
Yeah. I'd
Oh my
love
goodness.
to post the final later, and TCAF can have their TCAF has already now commissioned their artwork for 1,000 years from now.
Oh yeah, yeah. There it is.
Your legacy will live on.
Already paid for, yeah. But
Yeah.
I gotta admit, this is also one of the things that I'm just sort of happy that can be recreated. Like this experience of like just having conversations and falling into different ideas and like with people, and it's just like it's just really neat that this can also happen virtually, because this is one of the great things I think that also Word on the Street was great for, like just happenstance ideas and conversations being exchanged and stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Just being able to be in this huge swell, this huge crowd of people who are of like mind, at least in some respect, and being able to kind of like vibe with a group of people, or with, somebody after a panel, you're there with a group of people like, oh man, that was so neat. And you start your own side conversation based on, inspired by what you've read or what you've seen or heard that day.
Oh
It
yeah.
is, I think, something that we all deeply, deeply miss.
Oh, for sure. And hopefully, like this will be like our first year of doing this, and maybe the last year of doing virtual conventions, but hopefully not the last time we do conferences or video conferences and stuff like this. Because this is,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, especially for the reason that, everyone's talking about hybrid this and hybrid that. And I honestly am a huge proponent of it, because I think that, like we said at the beginning of this, there are industries or fields or particular groups of people that have been making use of this technology for ages before we
Hmm.
quote unquote had to, you
Yeah.
know? And so seeing us really intentionally decide, which events are going to be in person, which events are going to be virtual and open for everyone to access that way. Like, what's the space we're creating, and why are we creating it? I think getting really intentional about that space is going to help, I don't know, just mature the idea of events, right? It feels like we've just, oh, those banners. I just saw that in the little the like whole picture. I'm like, oh, there they are. Like, I'm watching the up close lines, and then I turn and look, like, oh, it turned into an object. But no, yeah, I think there's an intentionality towards event creation and space making that is going to really come out of all of this nonsense.
Oh yeah, I think that would be
Um,
really great too, because like I mean, honestly, the idea of like being able to share these experiences across from like so many different communities and locations is just it's so appealing, to be honest. Sorry, one second here.
no problem. For everyone watching at home, just going to remind you that the Toronto Comic Arts Festival still has a couple days left to its runtime, and also that they have generously decided to archive all of their events. So if you've missed anything this week, you can catch the replay if you want to go take a look at some of the amazing panels that TCAF has put together this week.
Oh, so sorry. I had to quickly wipe my nose.
No, a brief commercial break for the Toronto Comic Arts Festival.
But yeah, like it's just great, like the idea of like having so many different communities that like say aren't able to come to shows like on the day of, be able to like actually participate in some way. So I think that opens up like so many different like ideas and venues and like ways for people to engage the content. So I think that's really cool. Like
Yeah, up
hopefully
to and
we can
including, I was thinking you were mentioning earlier about children's publishing and things, and I also know that you have taught a whole bunch of workshops and you have your manga dojo and all of these things. So
oh
I
yeah.
feel that it also creates access for people to learn skills. Like, the community aspect is obviously huge, and to be able to like just nerd out about stuff, but also to be able to acquire these skills and to take master classes and to learn the art of storytelling, the art of poetry, the art of illustration.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because I think one of the things that's like really really key actually about like just conventions in general is just that like it it's able to, well, they're able to like make uh form communities based on just activities, and so people feel a lot less alone about like discussing ideas that maybe like they haven't been able to find any traction within their community or something. And so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of resource, whether just like intellectual resource and like just community, I think is really great. So like if there are people that are interested in like making comics and just haven't been able to find um, those sort of knowledge resources that they need, they can at least find them at a show. Because I know like for myself growing up, like it was very was very difficult for me to find people that wanted to talk about comics because it was just, a different time and place back then.
Mm.
Um, and so being able to actually like find people that wanted to talk about it or were enthusiastic about it was just like, it was such an eye-opening experience for me.
I was going to ask, how did you get started with this? Like, I saw that, I didn't read this part of the bio, but you graduated from Sheridan. And there's a parallel universe where I also went to Sheridan, but it's not this one. But how did you get started? Like, what did every infant draws, and then some of us drop off and some of us don't. So, what I guess spurred you to keep doing it?
It was some of it was just stubborn determination. And like, I think there's a part where you just have to really just sort of like keep throwing yourself at this wall, and then somehow you break through. And then another part of it was just like sort of falling into it backwards. So it's a little strange. I ended up getting into. I've always enjoyed comics, and then I started getting into doing not really taking it super seriously until like all right, I need a second to really think about it.
No, for sure.
I was trying comics and illustration. I found out that there were art colleges for one thing after high school, and then I went into Sheridan, and it was through Art Fundamentals. I wasn't really sure like what I was going to do with my life, but I knew that I wanted to draw comics really badly. And so when I was able to go into art college, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm getting a lot closer to what I want to do. And so afterwards, when I got into computer animation, and then it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. Like it was fun, but I felt like I'd spent so much time drawing that I wanted to just keep on drawing. And so I kept trying to figure out how I was going to do this. So one day I just started making comics, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to break in somehow, and I have no idea how or where, but this is how I'm going to do it. And so I ended up like making my comics, and then I went to San Diego, and then just started showing my comics around. I was just showing off the portfolio and trying to get anyone to look, and I ended up actually like meeting some people that wanted some artists, and then I was from that point on, I was kind of just making art all the time, just freelancing and doing illustration. Now it seems like it's a lot easier. You don't have to go to the States, but I do feel like
You don't have to truck it to Comic-Con.
yeah, it's not that necessary anymore. But I do think that like conventions are an important thing in terms of like developing those communities and those instances where you can go and meet like-minded people and try and figure out like how this all works. And so that's always kind of been a mainstay for me.
Even just on the industry side of things too, like if there's craft, obviously there's always talks about craft that you can engage with. But like, as you say, it's so much of the tough part is like, okay, how do I make it happen though? Like I have this talent, I have this skill, I have stories, like how do I put them in front of people? And there are ways, but they're not often just talked about out in the open. You need to go and seek, like you were saying, these very intentional communities, or people who've done it before as mentor figures. So one thing that I appreciate about TCAF this year is there was a Word Balloon Academy, which happened earlier this week, which I think, and it was kind of all about sort of the getting your books to market, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, obviously. But I think also like with people willing to discuss it, willing to share their information and knowledge, it's like it's such a huge thing and it's such a gift, really. That it's like that it's wonderful when it gets shared. Something I've been finding too is like just finding strength in like I think resources from history. So like reading about people that have done this before, and sort of taking a different look at things, like vanity publishing as like sort of a derogatory term, but like seeing a history of it and seeing that there have been like lots of people that have like made their own books and like gone on to do all sorts of things. It becomes a really neat thing seeing that like this impetus to create books and like wanting to just share is not new, you know, and that's like I think be awesome. So,
Absolutely. And I mean, like we have things like we have Canzine now, we have like the zine as a medium, right?
mhm.
Which is it kind of
Oh, it's so
it,
important.
it helps to break in that way, right? You know, if it's the same, I think of it as a chapbook with poetry, right? It's
Oh yeah.
you don't need a whole 100 pages of sequential art. You can have sort of a short thing or a couple of single pagers, and you are able to print them out at Staples and bind them together, and you can hit the street like that, right?
Oh yeah,
um
absolutely. And there's even
Instead
like
of,
stuff
yeah,
about like making fan fiction. Like the number of people that have been
yeah,
like making fan fiction and then like sort of gotten their start that way, and then developing their skills, honing their craft, and then like also just creating stuff that they really want to, like developing their storytelling skills that way. It's
it's
huge.
huge, yeah.
I had no idea. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, it's so interesting to talk about. We're going to do another deep dive here, everybody. Hope you're enjoying this at home. It turned into a master class. Oops. I think about
I'm more than
copyright
happy.
law, and the idea of intellectual property and
Yes.
of like who can work with, who can innovate on, who can draw inspiration from which ideas and to what extent. And that's a very new thing,
Hmm.
like in the last couple centuries kind of thing. And before that, it was all folk, right? It was all folk tales and mythology, and everyone just pulled from everybody else and nobody cared. And
Yeah.
now there's money involved, so it's different now because people need to eat. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's interesting that uh, with fan fiction and stuff like that, there's always the drama around certain creators, which shall remain nameless, who get like really uppity about people creating fan works and are like, "You can't do that. This is my thing," and like that's not authentic. It's like, well, it's not really
Ah.
supposed to be. And like, I mean, as far as personally, my opinion is like, I'm of the opinion that everything is everything, right? It's all just soup, and we're all tossing ingredients in and seeing what happens. And so I'm a huge proponent of fanfic as either a way to hone your craft or just to enjoy stuff and explore character dynamics, explore, plot, whatever.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of neat to sort of like seeing how um how fan fiction is sort of utilized. It doesn't feel like it's actually like, we're intending to make money from this. It just feels like more like this is convenient. This is something that'll keep interest up, and it's a way to explore the mechanics of storytelling, like at its most basic, I guess. Um, and then just sort of seeing like how that works. It feels like so much of everything already is fan fiction in one way or another. Like
Yeah.
so it feels like this shouldn't be that big of a deal, really. You know?
Like fan fiction is just like they're just folk stories. We just gave them a different name. Um,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
this is
exactly.
getting into the theory of how ideas move over cultures and over the cultural imagination. But no, definitely, how many, and every time that something enters the public domain,
Oh
right, there's
yeah.
an explosion. Like the Great Gatsby just recently finally crossed the threshold, entered the black hole of public domain.
Oh my
um,
goodness.
and I'm
What?
so excited for what's going to happen, right?
Oh sure.
Because the ability to update stories for now. There's no such thing as like a classic. Nothing is timeless in the way that we tend to think about timeless
Hmm.
stories, right? Like there are elements, sure, that have persisted across all of human history, but everything is a product of its time.
Oh, absolutely.
So
And
it's fun to watch it be updated.
oh yeah, and necessary too. It's sort of like
Mm.
seeing like how these things get readapted, what it is that that people are up to and really thinking about, and like just seeing like what people can add to it,
Hmm.
like what are these things that like people wish to historicize, what do they wish to add,
Yeah.
like they all become very interesting conversations, and also just part of what makes society move, really.
So, what are some of, I won't say influences because it's not exactly what I'm getting at, but to speak of this like as a broader cultural conversation and making art as participating in that conversation,
Mhm.
what are some of the conversations that you hope that your art kind of is a part of and that you like to jump in on by creating art in response to or as like a, as a part of that sort of
uh,
discussion?
I think for the moment, and I don't want to get too down on my work, I guess, is that I don't feel as though I've created too much in the way that actually adds too much to the conversation, like for the time being. I think the things I've made have just been they've been really fun, and I think that they're good enjoyment. Some of it's like learning tools and all the rest. Um, like risk management. I'm sure there's like plenty of people who are wanting to look for comics on risk management and can somehow find my name in that.
You'd be surprised.
But yeah, I don't think that I've made too much that really is has added to the conversations that I think that I'd like to have now. And so I think where I'd like to move towards is like while I'm being ambitious is to try and develop those conversations that people have um, around culture, around ideas of I guess ideas of citizenship, of like identity, of who we are, and like what these things mean. There's been a lot of attention, obviously, focused on East Asians as sort of well, and also Asians in general. I think as sort of being othered and not quite integrating into society. So looking into those issues, those questions of like otherness, of like being able to integrate into society, and sort of seeing like that definition of Canadian, sort of broadening that idea out. I think those are starting to become conversations and ideas I'd like to explore. It's heavy, but feels very necessary at this time, I think.
I look forward to seeing what you have to say about it. And like, don't feel like you got to rush, right? It's, I think one of the problems of our time is that everyone feels like they need to have an opinion now.
Oh yeah.
And especially, with an art piece or with anything, it's a distillation of thinking over long periods of time.
Yeah, it's very challenging actually. I started attending school actually over this pandemic, and so starting to just develop ideas and just see what exploring new ideas, and just trying to open myself up to like what's out there. So before, I don't think I ever really thought too deeply about things because I tended to be kind of dismissive about my work and stuff. Very starving artist sort of perspectives. But now I think that I'm willing to engage in these ideas, to take them more seriously, and like and really start to explore really what art has to offer, and what I can offer, I guess, other people too by way of art. It becomes really really interesting.
I also want to say, just as a shout out to your current body of work, that fun is a hugely underrated part of it. Seriously, it's a hugely underrated part of the cultural conversation. If we don't have fun, then we live miserable lives.
That is very true. Yeah.
And I also feel that, we should always make time for fun and for pleasurable activity and for enjoyment while we are doing all this very important work, while we're doing activism, while we're educating ourselves, while we're speaking out about things. We got to have some time, in our own communities to just kick back and have a good time, because otherwise you get exhausted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that, the feeling of like just sort of being burdened and like and having too much is really real, that kind of burnout. So yeah, being able to just sort of like take time to experience joy and to have a good time is like, it is a really serious thing, and I shouldn't
don't discount it that easy. Yeah. Come on.
No, because it's a real thing. Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. Yeah, like it's I don't know, it's been a really interesting time sort of exploring different ideas, and like and looking at things and just sort of like seeing what's going on. Like everyone's doing so much interesting work, and having these conversations that are like really intense, but also like, I guess, overdue.
And you can see the growing pains, right? Like I've got a good friend who told me once that publishing specifically, this is in the context of the publishing industry, looks like a total mess right now, all across the board, just everywhere, just shrapnel everywhere. But one of the reasons why it looks like that is because we're finally having these conversations, and it makes things uncomfortable, and it blows things up, which need to be blown up. And it's actually a sign not of complete, terabad, everything is awful. It's more a sign of like, no, things are changing, and I don't want to say it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's not really what I'm going for. But I think what my friend meant when they said this is like, it's weirdly heartening to see that these conversations are being had, obviously, because the alternative in many other industries is they're just not. They're still being ignored. They're still being dismissed.
Yeah, which is, obviously not the way to go. So like confronting these things, I agree. It's like overdue, and like one of those things that like really does help bring other people and other voices into the conversation. So like it's difficult now, but it's certainly not like where I think things are going to end up in the future. Like
Maybe by TCAF 3031, we'll have
yeah,
sorted
one
it
can only
out.
hope. Yeah. So it's pretty fascinating. Like sort of understanding that this is like more just about like oops. Um I guess trying to block systemic barriers, I think, that preclude people from participating fully. It's probably
Mhm.
the most the most articulate way I could put it. I don't know. Like the
Oh,
most formal, I guess, too. I don't know.
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's like it's pretty interesting, and so I'm glad that things are things are moving, I guess. That's probably the nicest way to put it.
They're going somewhere. Yeah, that's for sure. It's been good to see too that this sort of take it with a bucket of salt, because I say this from my perspective as a white person,
Right.
but that so many people who have historically been pushed out of the conversation have been able to enter into it fairly recently.
Hmm.
Obviously, those conversations have been had, like they've been continuing, they've been happening in perpetuity, just not in a space where everybody can see them,
Hmm.
because they've been pushed out. So it's, I think, like you say, really great to see that. The barriers are still there. It's not like they've all been knocked down, right? That would
No,
be,
definitely not.
disingenuous to say that. But more and more lately, they're being pointed at and being like, okay, so we need to acknowledge that this is here,
Hmm.
and this is an impediment to our success as a community or my success as an individual. And there are other people who don't have those barriers. So what are we going to do about it? And then a community comes together, or an organization comes together, or people and come in and say, well, okay, we're going to fix this somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I
And I
think
think
art is a huge part of making that happen.
hmm yeah, exactly. Because like the stories I don't think really come out otherwise. Like it is
Mm.
these stories that that start the conversation. It are the it is these stories that help really get people to sort of recognize that this is something that one person is feeling. Maybe like there are more people out there that also feel this way, and it's important to just sort of start to at least start somewhere, And I think that's uh that's one of the really great things about art. Um, so many things seem to just come from having these small conversations and having the spaces to have these conversations too.
Yeah.
Because frequently, like I guess um, as technology seems to be getting more and more ubiquitous in our lives, it almost feels like spaces are sort of disappearing in terms of like
Mm.
where we can have these conversations where we can feel free to sort of like find acceptance for these things. And so that's these are all pretty important to try and find that support you know so whether it's like zine festivals, whether it's like stores or bookshops, like all these things are just really important. um,
Yeah, local indie bookstores, everybody.
oh my
If you
god, yeah.
haven't ever been to a local indie bookstore, you are missing out.
Oh my god, yeah.
The stuff that happens in there, the people that run those are just, cultural workers in the extreme. So shout out to everybody
Yes,
who is part of that ecosystem.
absolutely. And just seeing like how they've been able to like go through this entire time, it's been a huge challenge for
Yeah.
sure. So I'm very like surprised, and I'm uh, in awe of like what it is that they can do, like how they can pull together. And I'm glad because like they're necessary. They're very important to maintain these conversations, to maintain these like communities. Like obviously like TCAF itself is just like without this, like, you know, it's very difficult for comics that aren't within that mainstream to sort of
Hmm.
be seen and be accepted, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a certain sense of legitimacy is an interesting word to use in this context, because then we're talking about people who've been pushed out of legitimacy for some time, but also just emerging creators in general. But being able to table at TCAF or table at Canzine, like that lends you, at the very least, I feel like a certain sense of personal legitimacy. Like I remember you said earlier that you're like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of dismissed my work up until this point.
Yeah.
And also earlier of talking about how kind of it's the cat in the box, and then you get out of the box and there's another box. It's like the box is all the way out.
Yeah.
And a milestone like being able to really show up to a huge community environment and be like, I am sitting here, virtually or otherwise, back in the before times and hopefully the after times, I am physically sitting here at this table. My stuff is on the tablecloth. People are looking at it. We're having conversations about it like that. I feel there's a real sense of tangibility there that helps to cement, like, no, you're doing it, right? And it does matter.
Yeah, absolutely, because they really help put those milestones, I guess, in terms of like achievement, which are really critical, I think, for success. Yeah, like you're saying, and I guess like more, I guess when it comes to ideas of legitimacy and what's sort of real and what's authentic, I guess those questions are starting to, I guess, be more in play now. I guess now that I think about it, because like as Amazon books, like distributions and like self-publishing become more of a thing, then sort of start to question like what are the gatekeepers? Are they necessary, or is this just like another way of distributing ideas?
Wow, is this from memory? A side note, the TPL, because it looks like the TPL. It looks like the reference library. There's the elevator.
Yeah, I started working as like a library worker actually, like in 2019. So I spent a lot of time at the reference library. So this is wow, I didn't realize how much I'd sort of like really internalized it. But
yeah, you spend enough time in a place, and that's what it'll do to you. You're porous, right? You and the space inform each other. That's so cool.
God, that is so shocking. I did not expect that. Oh yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes, I think, to wrap up. This has come together so cool. I love, I scoped your Instagram as well. Go and look at the way that you sort of like sketch up a thing from like really, really rough, just like circles and lines. And then it slowly becomes magnificence like this.
I did not expect it. Like I just, these things have sort of come out, and sorry, thank you very much for saying so. I really appreciate it. I always think that like when I'm sketching stuff on Instagram, it's just me being goofy. Like
I think every artist thinks this, Eric. I think everybody dismisses their work, and imposter syndrome is real. And it's like, I forget who said this. Somebody said this to me, or perhaps it was, some wise sage on the internet, on the Bird app, that said, the next time that imposter syndrome strikes, just let it. Fine, you're a trickster god. Fool them all. Don't try to prove it to yourself. Just go with it.
Oh yeah, there was something actually that I heard about recently about imposter syndrome, and I sort of like sort of internalized this like just recently, and it was like this idea of like maybe with some people that feeling of imposter syndrome exists just because you don't see other people who are like you actually doing it. Like I can't think of that many like Korean Canadians. Like there are a good number that have like done a lot of comics, but it almost feels like there's still few and far between. So seeing that representation, like even if it's just like doing something within your community, like, oh, I'm just going to draw zines or whatever, like seeing someone else do it really helps empower people with the idea that, yeah, they too can do it. They can do whatever. And so it's, yeah, like I finally got it. I guess that's the bell, eh?
That's the good idea bell.
Another good idea. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's about it.
Check it out.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I was not expecting it.
You've written yourself 1,000 years, or you've drawn yourself 1,000 years into the future.
Yeah, it's pretty I don't know. It's a little cocky, I think. Who knows? Who knows where things will be in the past?
Who knows what could happen, Our expectations have already been dashed once.
Who knows? Maybe this is just 2022. I have no idea.
That would also be nice.
Yeah, that'd be okay.
Well, this has been a fantastic Thursday afternoon for me. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. This has been, I crave these intellectual conversations, and I also crave watching cool art be made. So this is fantastic.
Oh, I'm really glad to be a part of it, and thank you very much for having me. And I'm so glad to have had this conversation. It was just really nice to be able to talk about all this stuff.
I'm so glad. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and enjoy your weekend.
Oh yeah, the weekend.
It's coming. It's good. Tomorrow's Friday, but like it's coming.
It's good enough. I'll take an early one. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Okay, take care.
You too. And thank you to everyone at home who has watched, whether it was for 5 minutes or for the entire hour. Usually weekly features are 20 minutes, but we had a really special a special format today. So if you want to go and see more of Eric's absolutely fantastic work, you can go visit gamma.inkscratch.com. That's scratch with a K. Or you can go and find his work on social media at inkscratch. You can explore what Toronto's comic arts scene has to offer the rest of this week at torontocomics.com. The Toronto Comic Arts Festival will be archiving their events for a short while after the festival is over, so you can catch the replay for anything that you missed. And for discounts and deals on our part, you can check out toronto.thewordonthestreet.ca/weekly-features. Thank you all so much for a wonderful afternoon. And from all of us at WOTS to you, happy Comic Arts Week.